Yeah, it's always about Steve.
Of course.
My name's Aimie and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Aimie.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. Thanks everybody for showing up tonight. I appreciate your service to my recovery, because showing up is, I think, the most important part. So I'd like to start with the set aside prayer. And yep. So God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, the 12 steps, the big book, the meetings, my disease, and you, God, so I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please let me see the truth. That prayer has helped all of us, many of us, to walk through this with, as they say, an open mind. I was, okay, so let me start with my home group is the 8 a.m. Langley Fellowship meeting on Whidbey Island. You guys are welcome anytime to come join us. That's on Sunday morning. And I have a sponsor. Her name is Christabel. She is in Ohio. And she has a sponsor. And I also sponsor women. So let me start with saying that when I was exposed to the program, I went through a few treatment programs. That's where I was first exposed to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had a chip on my shoulder and I wasn't ready. And, I did things like go to outpatient treatment because I had to get my kids back because they were, taken away by CPS. But that still wasn't enough for me to like take it as, wow, you have a disease and, you might want to address it. And Alcoholics Anonymous may have some solutions for you. It was more something like, I'm supposed to go to these self-help groups. Does church count? And so I would skip right over you guys and go to church, even though I wasn't really into that either, and get my little slip signed. And I got through outpatient like that, for that first round. And so I just avoided you guys like the plague. So the set aside prayer is one of those things that helps me stay right sized. Because I did have, all these ideas that my disease had created to keep me away from you and the solution. So thanks for going through that prayer with me. So let's just say that my life was unmanageable. Let me go to the steps here in the book so I can give this a rundown. So my life was definitely unmanageable, and I was totally powerless over many things, people, places, things, especially my disease. And what that looked like was when I came in here this final time, I was in a psychosis. And, I was delusional to the extent of like, wow, I probably should have been, institutionalized. But where I was in a domestic violence shelter for women, because those are the kind of relationships that I cultivated in my active alcoholism. And I had 3 children with me in that in that place. And I thought it was him. And, if I could just go out and get away from that situation, then I probably wouldn't do this. And the reality is that I found one of us in that shelter and I did the same thing again. The definition of insanity, expecting a different result, and I did not get a different result. And there was something about that moment when it was just me and my disease that just helped me turn to you guys. So I have a father that's in the program. He had been in the program for several years. My first trip to rehab, he got it. And so he had a few years in here before I got here, and that's who I called to say, hey, I'm in this city. Where can I go for a meeting? And that was my first step. I haven't stopped coming to meetings since that day. And during, so my alcoholism started way back. I was a teen mother, and that was a direct result of my alcoholism at 15 years old. And things like I mentioned before, having my children removed from my care because I was incapable, at that time were some of the examples of my bottom in my disease. Um, so that kind of gives you a small picture of what that looked like. And so coming in here, when the second step says came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, um, the power greater than myself part, I didn't cultivate until I met you guys. I had been exposed to those ideas as a child, or as the book says, um, every man, woman, and child has that deep down inside of them, the fundamental idea of God. And I was able to find that here because of these steps and because of your guidance and your and the things that you shared. And I'm truly grateful, because I would not have the life that I have today without my higher power. And I'm reminded constantly by you guys, because for some reason it doesn't come naturally to me to like, I have a problem, you should pray about it. My sponsor says things to me like, I bet, I'll call her with a problem, and she says, I bet that when you prayed about it before you called me, I'm like, oh, let me call you back. And throughout our literature, it just constantly brings us back to our higher power. And I'm so grateful for that, because I do have a relationship with a higher power today. So making that decision in the third step to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, sure, shit, have it. Like that step, and going through that with a sponsor for the very first time was a huge relief, because I really thought that I ruled the world, my world. Like I was, the one that was going to make things happen. And if I was incapable of making those things happen, then I was this big failure at life. And what a relief to know that if I have a problem today, I can pray about it and take the next indicated step that somehow appears in front of me. I don't know how it happens, but it does every time. And I get the relief just by making the conscious contact. And then something always presents itself. And it doesn't always look like a solution. One of my sponsors, I would go to her and I would talk to her about these things, and she would say, oh, it sounds like an opportunity. And I'm like, an opportunity to grow. Oh, is that what we're supposed to be doing here? Damn it. So making the decision to turn my will over, it's an everyday thing. So for making the searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. And I do have a little bit of prejudice about that word moral for whatever reason, and someone helped me replace that with truth. So what does the truth inventory look like in my life? And, I've done layers and layers of these. My first go around was really just like what was right in front of me. And as I have progressed, I never shared my date. My date is May 2nd, 2013. And so this month we share 9 years. So thank you. Thank you. I'm really grateful for step 4, because I found out what my defects and my assets were, and they have grown. Both. I have found new ones on this side and that side as I have come up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the cool thing is there's a solution. So, yeah, that was a freeing step. I kind of hear like around the rooms that it's, oh my gosh, that's so scary. That's the one that I don't want to do. Or when I get to it, I fall off or whatever. But that wasn't my experience. I wanted to like expose myself. So I was talking to Ryan earlier, and what I wanted to lead with, and I've heard another group do this, is they get up and they don't say, I'm an alcoholic. They say, I'm a liar. I'm selfish. I'm fearful. And those are things that still crop up in my life today, but at least I can recognize them and say them out loud, because there is a solution, because I have a higher power, because I have the steps. And my experience, as you'll hear, is that I've overcome some of those things. So I'm very grateful. So admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. Like I just said, I wanted to get that out of there. 6 and 7. So 6, it's really short in the book. We just got a paragraph each. And I just kind of brazed over it in the beginning, is what it felt like. But as I've been able to have the gift of passing this along and working with those character defects that I said just kind of rise up throughout your lifetime, my lifetime, I've been able to really grab onto 6 and 7 and understand their depth. So entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. This one always makes me laugh because there was a guy in Olympia when I was getting sober that was like, oh, if I ask him to remove, if I'm entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character and then I humbly ask him to remove my shortcomings, I'm just going to be this, a dust that disappears because I'm just one big shortcoming, walking shortcoming. And I was like, oh, yeah, you get me. That's what I would feel like. But I get to ask, sometimes daily, please help me overcome whatever defect is coming up. And one of them was anger and the way that comes out. And specifically towards my children and raising my voice, there was just a wall that I hit where I was like just sick of myself. And I would go into the meetings and I would tell you guys, what just happened today and how I failed at that again. I failed. I raised my voice, and this is the thing I keep asking God. What's your deal, God? Why haven't you stepped in yet? And I would share all of this with you guys. And, weeks went by and I continued to do that. And at some point, the talk about it tapered off, and the gift of this program and that recipe lifted that. And it's not that I don't do it today. It's that when I do it, there's farther spaces in between. And I'm really grateful for that. And that's kind of what having my character defects lifted looks like over time. So 8, made a list of persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. That was very, it says willing. And I really love that. And I like to point that out to the women I pass this on to, is that we're just going to try to become willing, because it was super scary I had no people skills. In fact, I tried to avoid you. And especially someone who I had harmed, it just it was very uncomfortable. But again, there's the opportunity to stand up and do those things. So making a list, becoming willing, and then making direct amends to such people wherever possible. And there's 2 I'd like to share with you. And one of them is I had that daughter that I had when I was 15 years old was 18 when I got sober. And she had been through a lot with me. And when I made my initial amends to her, it sounded something like, it's okay, Mom. Just keep doing what you're doing. And a few years later, another opportunity arose. I had this sponsor who had talked to me about layered amends. And she says that people that are close to me that have always been in my life deserve layered amends. And when I realize something from my past that I haven't been accountable for yet, taken that accountability for yet, I need to do the thing. I need to make the amends. And even if I have already made an amends. So what that looked like with my daughter is, now she was in college. I drove up to Girl Stock to be a part of that convention. And she was going to school up there, and we had lunch, and she came to one of the speakers with me. And after our time together, it just felt like a moment. So there's these intuitive thoughts that happen, like, I wish I should have said that. Has anybody ever felt like that? Like, I wish I would have said something because that was the thought. So something else really cool about being connected to the power is that I get to listen to those thoughts today and take action. And it's not an easy thing to do, and I don't always do it, but I have had the opportunity to do that, and this was one of those times. And so I had that little intuitive thought and I brought it out again. And I have this little recipe for the ninth step. And so I started from the top, and what happened was she was able to share with me, because part of that recipe that I use for the ninth step is, how did I leave anything out? Is there anything you would like to share with me that I did not bring up? And then how did that make you feel? And the part where someone tells you how that made them feel, um, I swear that that's the part that keeps me, on the path. When, if nothing else will, like, I don't ever want to make, someone feel that way ever again. So it's very powerful to hear what the feeling was. And then what can I do to make this right? How can I heal this relationship? What can I do to further the growth in our relationship? And just to ask that. And man, I'm sure that she wanted to say these things in the beginning. And that's what I said to her. She said, I was too scared that it was going to upset you and that you were going to relapse. And so she was unable to do that in the beginning. And I'm so grateful that I stuck around and you guys helped me stick around so that I could do that with her. And she was able to be free of those things that she had carried around. And some of them were things that I had not thought about. But because of the program, I am willing to take responsibility for however I made you feel and what I did, even if I didn't recognize it at the time. Another one was to my dad and, both of my parents really. And I had an opportunity to help one of our family members who was struggling. She's got kids. It was like the same scenario, but I was on the flip side of it. She's got 3 little kids. I'm in her apartment. It's like, oh my God, how are you living in here? And, she doesn't want anything to do with her kids and it was just me. And my parents were the ones that picked up the pieces when that happened. And when I made my amends, I was not thinking about that. I mean, there may have been mention of thanks for helping me out when I was down, but to be in the middle of that and have that opportunity, I called both of them that night. I stayed with her and the kids, and I called them both that night and just said, I am so sorry for having put you through that. The worry about your grandkids and the worry about your daughter and like what the future was to hold in the condition that I was in. So layered amends. So I'm grateful to have that step so that I can move forward, because the beauty one of the things that I find, very important is that my past is my greatest asset today. And it's not, I'm not proud that my kids were removed from my care. I'm not proud that I put my parents, it's not, it doesn't settle well with me, but I can share that with another woman and to have them be able to relate to that and see that recovery is possible even when you've, stumbled like that. Uh, it turns that into an asset somehow. So what a great gift that is. So 10, 11, and 12. So that's good stuff. Continuing to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So for a while, well, let's just say that 10 is interesting because it's that intuitive thought, like, oh, I should have said that, or, it's just right in that moment, or maybe even later that day, you just kind of reflect on the day. I reflect on the day and go, oh, well, there's something I need to clean up. And what a gift that is, because then I don't have to go through that whole thing that I just did, 1 through 9. I don't want to have to sit down every year and go, okay, I need an overhauling, feeling like shit by the end of the year, So that's what the gift that step brings, step 10 brings, is just being accountable for my actions, if I can recognize them throughout the day. And if I can't, we've got step 11. And in the book, what a cool, like I like to call it, recipe that is to sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact. as we understood him, praying only for the knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And I love that word power, and it was pointed out to me several times throughout my experience with having sponsors, is that I can't do any of this without the power. So how do I get connected to the power? And like I said in the beginning, that reminder that I need to stay as close as I can to my higher power so that I can do to the best of my ability, show up to the best of my ability. Um, and I wanted to look at those pages here. Bear with me. Oh my gosh, I'm just flipping through my book. Where's the inventory, girls?
63.
Thank you.
Oh, you're talking about
No, not
10 stuff.
Yep.
86.
86 and 87. Jeez. I'm a little nervous, so that happens. Okay. Well, here's my little prayer and meditation that my daughter made me. It's supposed to keep my place, but apparently I've lost it. So that whole idea that when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. And so this is such an important piece. And my sponsor reminds me to spend time in it, because I'll just write it out. So I got this 15-minute marker here that says sit with it. And then at the end it says, after making my review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measure to take. So again, in the literature, every time it gives me a direction, it leads me to my higher power to complete that. And the 12th step has been the most impactful opportunity that I have gotten in Alcoholics Anonymous. Sometimes it's looked like me chairing a meeting, and that kept me in the meetings. Sometimes it looked like me signing up for a committee or a secretary position with a group, and then I found out what the traditions were all about. And it's been a huge gift because it ripples out into my life outside of Alcoholics Anonymous, because now I have one, and helps me to show up to the best of my ability in those ways too, because the business meetings were so mundane when I first came in here, and I did not understand the reason, that all that was going on. And I do now, but even showing up today, it's like, okay, let's get through this thing. And I'm grateful to be of service, and I'm grateful that you guys taught me how to do that. But the other piece of the 12th step is, for me, is passing this along to other women. And you guys, the women in my life, have taught me so much about myself and about this program. And what's cool is I get to pass it on to other people, and as they're going through it, I'm going through it too. So I pass on a step, and then I pick up the phone and call my sponsor and say, hey, there was something, I missed, or something I haven't been applying, or I hear myself say something and I'm like, why can't I, remind myself of that, to use that. And I think, again, that's why sponsorship is so important, because without it, I can pass it along, but for some reason I can't pull that up when I am in my stuff, my life stuff that I need, that guidance and someone to hold my hand. And here's a cool story. I've had a sponsor in Ohio for 3 years now, and we've met on Zoom and we've met over the phone, but we've never met in person. And she has revolutionized my recovery. There was something happening with me a few years ago before I met her, where I felt like I heard speakers talking about it too, like that I was dying of untreated alcoholism in the rooms. And I didn't really know what that meant. But I really felt it. And what that meant, when I say I don't know what that meant, I didn't know what else to do. I felt like I'm doing all the things, what's the deal? But 10, 11, and 12 and their interpretations and applications were I don't know if they were eluding me or if it just hadn't been like pressed upon me or if I just wasn't spiritually open enough. But when I reached out and started saying that to people, this was cultivated, this relationship with this woman. And over the last few weeks, my grandma passed away, and I took the 2,000-mile trip on the road with some family members to Iowa and for my grandma's memorial. And I got to meet my sponsor for the first time in the flesh. And she got to walk that walk with me. And it was very interesting because it was just like we have done the work so much together that we know each other, but to just have that moment in person and to have her there for that important moment was very special to me. And that's something that I cherish. And it is also something that I am grateful to have the platform to do for other people today. So I can show up genuinely for the most part to the best of my ability. And I wasn't able to do that before I came into this room. So it wasn't just removing the alcohol and drugs from my life. It is that you guys gave me a new way to live. So I'm very grateful for that. Another story, since I have 3 minutes left, I'll just throw it out there. While I was there, I was the family member that everybody was worried about. And even from afar. And I didn't realize the ripple effect that had. So I had an aunt who came to me and she said, your cousin is struggling, and what do I do? Because I know that you're doing this Alcoholics Anonymous thing, whatever that is. And it's working. So what do I do? And I was able to, connect, because we're everywhere. So I connected with someone in Alcoholics Anonymous in Iowa, and then that presented itself, and it was like, here, I have some people that are local. Let's get you guys hooked up, and let's do what we do. And everybody was very grateful for that. But in that unfolding, my aunts got to share with me how they had been affected. And because they kind of were like, because this is what we felt like when we were with you, and now it's happening with her. And I was like, oh man, I've never made an amends to these two ladies. And so I took the pause. I didn't do it right in that moment, but I prayed about it. And that next day I found 2 opportunities to be with each one of them on their own and just do what we did. I listened to the intuitive thought again and made those amends. And now I just have another level of freedom and another opportunity that this program has provided to heal my family. So thank you all for listening to me. And thank you for this opportunity to carry the 12th step. And thanks, Steve, again for bringing me here. And thank you, Ryan, for coming with. That's it. Thanks, everybody.